Thanks, Daria, for inviting me, and thanks to the conference for having me. So we're going to move from sand hills to sand dunes. So I'm going to talk about restoring dunes in the Monterey Bay. So this project occurred over the last few years. We wrapped it up last year, so it was about 2015 through 2019. And it was in the Salinas River State Beach. So that is in the middle of the Monterey Bay. If you're familiar with Elkhorn Slough, it's just south of there. This is the town of Moss Landing, the town of Castroville, where Norma Jean, aka Marilyn Monroe, was born. And it's a extensive state beach with a dune system. So we had some issues when we were looking at these dunes that they're extremely invaded by ice plant. And, you know, we all know that ice plant is bad, but there are several reasons why it's bad. It's not just because it outcompetes natives. It actually has ecosystem engineering effects where it overstabilizes the dunes. And so it creates this really thick mat, and it doesn't allow the dunes to be dynamic and move and fluctuate as they would under natural conditions. And so you get these really kind of static dune surfaces, and then when waves come, they catastrophically undermine the dune, and you end up with these almost cliff-like dune faces. And so that's one huge problem. The other problem is the human effects from trails, and where you have trails that go directly from inland out to the beach. As the waves come in, they're just going to run straight up that trail and erode it. And so this project came with funding from the State Coastal Conservancy, and it was around climate change resiliency and not exactly mitigation, but more of enhancement to increase resiliency. So the dunes are really important, not just for their own habitat value, but because they protect a lot of resources, natural and human resources, inland. So the dunes really provide that green infrastructure. From a climate change perspective, if you're looking at sea level rise and the future of modeling sea level rise, you can look at things like human infrastructure, tide gates, levees, but then you have this whole dune system that's green infrastructure. And so in a separate project, we actually did a study where we evaluated the future of this region, the central Monterey Bay, under future scenarios of sea level rise as well as storm surge. And what we found was that the ocean is as it's rising, is really going to be impacting a lot of these farmlands back here, as well as intact wetlands that are currently there. And so you're going to get a huge reduction in wetland habitat, which is our focus at the Central Coast Wetlands Group, to improve and increase wetland habitat and function in the region. So these future sea level rise scenarios show that there really is a huge threat to ag land in the region, which is of the economic value as well as cultural value. And so we really want to do all we can to buffer that coastline. So in this photo, we have sort of an oblique aerial view where this line is showing the projected beach erosion at 2100. So if we can make this dune system a lot more resilient, maybe we can hold the line against that. And in this project, we focused on the foredune because that's really the first line of defense against sea level rise and storm erosion, and it's also a really important habitat for the western snowy plover. They really like the beach and foredune. So we, for now, limited our efforts to primarily the foredune. We're seeking funding to expand that restoration effort to the whole dune. And we split our efforts in this project into 3 different areas. So there's the one that I just showed up at the north end, and then in the central area, the dunes are a lot wider, but they are still somewhat vulnerable, and there are houses nearby. And then the southern end is where the Salinas River mouth emerges, and this area is really prime habitat for snowy plovers, so we wanted to address that area as well. So we did a lot of ice plant eradication. We worked with a contractor to go out and use herbicide in a one-time application in order to kill the ice plant. We did experiment with other methods, which I'll get to, but when you have 30 acres of ice plant, it's a practical method. And then once we did that, we went out and had volunteers come and help us plant. We planted over 10,000 natives. This was some of our plant palette. Most of these are pictures I took, some of them are. But we collected seed locally from those dunes and propagated them. We propagated some, and then volunteers at state parks also did some propagation. Another thing we have out here is a couple of special status species. We have the Monterey spineflower, Coryzanthe pungens var pungens. We have a photo of it flowering. This is when it's sort of just has germinated fairly recently. But that's a cute little plant. And we also have the sand gilia, Gilia tenuiflora subspecies arenaria, which has these gorgeous purple flowers. And they really like open sand habitat, so the ice plant is definitely not good for them. So in terms of our monitoring, we did transects. We did transects that were perpendicular to the dune direction, or the ocean. And then we did parallel transects, both along the foredune and inland a little bit. And we did point intercept here, as well as here, and then also did quadrats to try to get a better sense of diversity with the quadrats. And then we also did some experimental treatments. So some of the data, we collected data from 2016 to 2019, and you can see the ice plant steadily reduces. The natives do have an overall increase. There's definitely some seasonal variation. And we also got an increase in the abiotic, which is mainly sand, also litter and dust and things like that. And this is all the data from all transects, all sites combined into one. We also looked at some of the individual sites, those 3 separate areas that I mentioned, which had similar results, but the native response was probably the best at Potrero. That was the site where we probably did the most revegetation. And all 3 of them, the ice plant reduced quite a bit, so we were happy with that. And then just looking at this data in a slightly different way, this is just data from just the foredune. And we actually have some new funding to do this ice plant eradication, dune restoration in a new area. And I'm going to shift the methods a little bit, because the way we did the methods initially, the foredune transect ended up being mostly on bare sand. It was so foredune, it was basically beach. And so we didn't really actually capture what was going on as much with the vegetation communities. So in this next phase, I'm going to shift that foredune transect inland 5 meters so that we'll actually capture the changes in vegetation better. And another thing we did was we used a terrestrial laser scanner and drones to look at the changes in topography. But I'm going to go into that. We're still kind of working on analyzing that. And we also, because of this issue with erosion, we wanted to try to build up the dunes. So we did some experiments with putting out hay bales as well as dragging driftwood and strategically placing it to build up sand around them. And that was anecdotally pretty successful. So our experiments, we did plots that were each 4 meters squared, and we did various treatments of removing the ice plant or leaving it as mulch, and then density of plantings as well as diversity of species. And we also worked with the Point Blue to look at the plover response, and we found that they were more successful with breeding after the restoration had occurred. So that was really nice to see. We also had a big component of public education. So we went into the schools and gave presentations about the dunes, and then we brought the students out to the dunes to help plant plants out there and really get them that experience. And these were students from the local communities who, even though they live near the beach, some of them probably had never been to the beach. And so they were all just really excited to get out there. We also put out interpretive signs, kind of going through some of this information that I've been talking about with the dynamics of the ice plant geomorphology and the species that are there, and how we're planting, how the contrast between the ice plant with its shallow roots and these native dune species with really deep roots that anchor the dunes but also allow them to shift in a more natural way. And with that, our next step, as I mentioned, we have some new funding to do another about 18 acres of restoration. So we're really excited for that. And then we want to seek more funding in the future to expand it to the whole dune system between Moss Landing and the Salinas River mouth.